We're taking a free guy to WeWork and following the Courier to the boss level. I'm Van Connor.
And I'm Becks Perfect, and this is Off Screen, your 7-day guide to everything movies.
Boom.
Groovy.
Welcome to Off Screen. Van, this week, we're kind of moving from movies into the world of video games. It's all very 8-bit this week, isn't it?
It's throwback in every sense. So
Yeah.
We're throwing back to like retro games with boss level. We're throwing back to like Fortnite from a couple of years ago and Grand Theft Auto with Free Guy. We're throwing back to, corporate co-working culture with WeWork. And we're throwing back to like sort of John le Carre style spy romps with Benedict Cumberbatch in the Courier, which I think is that's our first one to talk about.
That is our first movie. Yeah. Do you want, you were texting me saying, oh, this is so filling every sort of Russian history nerd like gasm that you've got. and I was like,
Russian history nerdgasm.
Yeah. And I was like, I couldn't get into it. So why don't you let's hear them? Yeah, let's hear the more positive. Well, let's hear what it's about, and then let's hear what like your thoughts are and why I couldn't really get into this movie.
Right, it's not a story I especially knew an awful lot about. So I'm gonna have to pull it up on my phone so I can have, because there's so many like Russian names and things, and I like to be thorough. You know me, I can't stand a mispronunciation.
Of course,
I hate it, sir. Right, so it's based on the story of Greville Wynne, who was a British businessman during the I think it's the 60s, during the Cold War. In fact, it specifically has to be the early 60s because this sort of leads to the Cuban Missile Crisis, which I think is 62, I think. So the idea here is that Greville Wynne's an ordinary British businessman who is basically drafted in by the government to serve as an intermediary, to basically be used effectively as a front. He's sent to Moscow to open like trade negotiations, between the East and the West. Basically, he's a sort of importer-export. He's a middleman. He connects companies in the UK with manufacturers in different countries and vice versa. That's his whole gimmick. So he's going over to Soviet Russia to basically do trade with the Soviet bloc. All of this, however, is a cover so that he can make contact with an aspiring defector, someone in the Soviet cabinet who is leaking information to not only the British government, but the American government as well. It's all being run sort of behind the facade of Benedict Cumberbatch as Greville Wynne. And there is the bromance between these two that then deepens and expands and becomes a real friendship. But it also then becomes this pivotal linchpin when the world finds itself facing the Cuban Missile Crisis. I know how insane this sounds, but believe me, this is a very straight-faced thriller, and you can hear Benedict Cumberbatch limbering up for it here.
We want you to act exactly like the ordinary businessman you are. That'll be much easier if you don't know any details.
Right, but will I be putting myself in danger? That detail I have to know.
Greville, let me put this delicately. You're a middle-aged businessman who drinks a bit too much and isn't exactly in top shape. During the war, you were private and never even saw combat. My point is, if this mission was the least bit dangerous, you really are the last man we'd send.
Well, thank you for putting it so delicately.
Make sure you wear it while you're in Moscow.
What does this do? Shoot poison darts?
Thank you so much, Greville. You're a good man, and I know we can count on you to be discreet.
It sounded. Is that Ray Fiennes?
No, that's Angus Wright with the eyebrows. He just has that face, and he's one of those guys, isn't he? He's one of those, you're that guy from that thing. Yet you can never remember the thing because he's in like
everything.
6 billion of them. But his name is Angus Wright, yeah.
Okay, fine.
Angus
fine.
Wright, and I think Rachel Brosnahan there as well. Is Brosnahan from... She's not from Mrs. Maisel, is she, Brosnahan?
Yes, she is, yeah.
Yes, okay, I've not seen that one, so forgive me.
Okay, so look, this is a really base reason why I wasn't able to watch it. It's relatively sort of slow, dark start, and you just have to be in the mood to want to sit down and follow that through. And I wasn't, and I couldn't pick it back up again. That was all it was.
I think if you do find yourself watching it, and don't get me wrong, it's very much a sort of film that you'll see on Channel 4 on a Thursday night at 9 p.m, kind of thing, and you probably will enjoy. It is like a John le Carre type
Yeah.
espionage tale, of course, based on a
Like
true story.
Tinker Tailor, those kind of things. Yeah.
Same kind of thing. In fact, the closest one would probably be The Imitation Game.
Yeah.
Would probably, because it's period piece, Benedict Cumberbatch, he's saving Britain during a war, it's the same kind of thing. He loves one of these. It's one of those, you know what you're getting. Competently directed. I think Dominic Cooks put this one together, who did On Chesil Beach a couple of years ago. Well put together, handsome looking period piece, great performances all around. I want to single out Merab Nadizki, I think it's Nadizki, who plays Penkovsky, the sort of the other half of this Cold War bromance that's going on. Across the board, Jessie Buckley's in there as well. I think that's a pretty decent little turn. She's not like one of the central characters, but she's a pretty big player in it. She's Greville's wife. It is good actors being good in bad wigs and period piece haircuts. You know what it is,
Yeah, you know what you're expecting to get from it, and it's probably, and that's the thing. Like for me, I've just got to be in the mood. It's a hit or miss if you're going to catch my attention or not. And if I was in a screening room and I was forced to sit down and watch this, I would have done. But I did. I was at home and I was kind of like, you know what, I can't.
It's good.
Too many distractions.
I really enjoyed it. It's the kind of movie I would have, once upon a time, I would have watched with my dad and enjoyed.
Yeah.
Like my dad and I would have seen this at the cinema, for instance, and he'd have had an absolute blast, and I'd have thought that was a pretty good little thriller.
Yeah.
And we never would have talked about it again. It's one of those. Having said that, whilst you're in it, it's very good.
Okay.
Whilst you're away from it, you're not especially going to remember it. So it's like 4-star while you're watching it, 3 when you're not.
Well, there we go. I think that's a kind of, I think that kind of just sums it all up, really. So let's move on to something that actually piqued both of our attentions. Dazzled us a bit. It's the documentary about WeWork. So that kind of co-working space in...
What's the full title? It's WeWork or the devaluation of a $47 billion unicorn or something like that.
Yeah, because if a company hits... WeWork or the making and breaking of a $47 billion unicorn. Basically, unicorn is if a company is valued at $1 billion, it's seen as a unicorn because investors will get 100 times their money back. But anyway, so what this is, right, is essentially it's like a cult documentary about a cult. It's incredible. So we know about WeWork. We've got them all dotted around London.
How many co-working spaces have you? Because obviously we spend a lot of time in places like this.
Yeah.
We used to record this show in a co-working space. I think when we were texting yesterday, I think we would say, one of us said it's Social Network meets Firefest.
So that's what you said, and I said. It follows the same tact as the Nixium documentary that we both watched, which is called Seduced. Yeah. And that's where, don't get me wrong, it doesn't go into kind of some sort of sex cult kind of thing, but there is a cult element to this, and it is fascinating. So just to give you an idea, it follows a guy who was like a serial entrepreneur, had a few ideas for lots of different things. They didn't quite work out.
Yeah, he had some rubbish ones, didn't he?
Yeah, the knee pads for babies was kind of regular.
I looked up other documentaries about WeWork after this. It's fascinating how that exact thing comes up in every single sentence that everyone says about
ridiculous. Yeah, it's so ridiculous. But anyway, he as any good entrepreneur will want to do, it's not just about the one-off product, it's about trying to change the world. And that's what he was doing. He was trying to change the way people worked in the future. And the idea was to create I'd almost say like a fraternity style co-working space, which members wouldn't feel like they're just there to work. They live and breathe off of each other. It even expanded to something called We Life, which is like a live-in space where you would literally become part of the furniture. And they had like these summer camps and things like that. It was nuts. I mean, we only saw over in the UK just a little tiny element of this, i.e. just the co-working element of it. But this was a real cult thing in the States. And it was amazing to watch its upwards and downfalls.
The future, it's about being part of something greater than yourself.
I believed every word that came out of Adam's mouth. Adam told me I was going to be a millionaire.
WeWork wanted to become the next Facebook, the next Google.
It became this poster child for this growing trend of flexible offices. They had already reached $1 billion valuation.
WeWork was the most overvalued company in the world.
They were willing to spend any amount of money.
When I say they're serving alcohol, they are serving alcohol.
Make some noise!
Everything about WeWork was propaganda.
For God's sakes, they're running desks.
That line right there, that made this documentary for me, because he reads out. That's from the what do you call it? That's from the when they attempted to go public, and that absolutely destroyed the company. They put like a credo on the cover that's like, "We will enrich the universe with our souls." He's like, "Come on, man, you're renting desks."
Yeah.
love that the movie never loses sight of that until it does, and that ruins it. Because I was having a ball with this. This is like a seriously fun, horrifying documentary. It's just got all of that Wolf of Wall Street insanity about it. And then you get to, I think, a bum note that it ends on, because of course, the movie's been made during COVID, so it ends with, and now we have COVID and we're all alone and we're all going to die.
And everyone sort of, they put on masks. There's this whole kind of montage at the end of all of the interviewees just putting on a mask. It kind of does feel irrelevant and also very long-winded as to how they do that.
It feels tacked on, and it feels like, this feels like obligatory, like someone thought, oh, well, I'm finishing my movie during COVID, so I'll timestamp this.
Yeah, I was literally just going to say it feels like a timestamp. But that aside,
great. Yeah.
It's great. And do you know what? I didn't know, like, I now would be like, there ain't no way I'm ever going to pay to be working at a WeWork. Like,
oh no, you wouldn't now. I had a podcast client once who specifically worked in a WeWork, and when some of the stuff that you're seeing in here in this documentary, I was just like, oh my God, I've seen some of this firsthand. Like, they're nuts. By the way, we had 55, apparently. I think it was 55 WeWorks in the UK, according to this documentary. At one point, we're showing a map. This just, again, if you saw the Firefest documentary and that was a thing that appealed to you, go and check this out, because this story's nuts. I can't believe. I knew that they devalued and all this stuff. The stuff you get from Engadget. I knew that side of it.
Yeah.
But oh my God.
Do you know what, as well? I think something they don't go into, and I'd love to kind of see a spin-off documentary about this, is the wife of Adam, the founder. Yes. So she is like the cousin of Gwyneth Paltrow. She's this odd-looking lady who has this like Svengali kind of feel about her. Yeah. And she's the kind of spiritual side of what Adam was pushing. And there was something really creepy about her.
Yeah, it seems at times like he is this Machiavellian Zuckerberg-style huckster, but he's sort of indoctrinated and controlled by the wife, which is this fascinating depiction. Honestly, if you have even the fate, regardless of WeWork, regardless of whether or not you know co-working spaces, if you just want to see a good, solid cult documentary, something like Nixium or a train wreck like Firefest, check this out from this weekend. This is really good. I think this is available on digital.
Good. I was going to say, because this is where it's going to find its audience. If it sits on somewhere digital like Netflix or something like that, or, you'll eventually see it there, this is where it will get that kind of Fire Festival buzz.
You would agree with me as well, though. This is not like a cardigan-wearing, straight-laced sit there and absorb this documentary. This is a call the lads, get the beers in, we're watching Firefest level documentary. That's what this is.
Yeah, and do you know what, guys? It's so worth your time. It's one of our top picks of the week, so definitely pull up a chair and enjoy WeWork. Welcome back to Off Screen. So you heard us waxing lyrical about WeWork. Now we're going to move from the world of co-working spaces into the world of video games. There is a big movie out. It stars a very big star. We all love him, Ryan Reynolds. And this is one that Van has caught. It's called Free Guy. It is in cinemas as of this weekend. Van, lots of hype around this. What's your thoughts?
I mean, this has been coming for what seems to be like 2-3 years now, Free Guy. And effectively, this is sort of Grand Theft Lego movie. if you can believe that. That's the best way I can describe it. So imagine that Ryan Reynolds who's the character in Emmett in the Lego movie, isn't it? The sort of everyman. Everyman is Emmett. Effectively, he literally is Emmett from the Lego movie. He wakes up in his bed every morning in the same outfit, in the pajamas, and he wakes up to the same catchy pop song, and he goes to, designated coffee chain and buys designated coffee beverage and walks to work, and he says the same stock catchphrases. He is a character in a video game. He's a non-playable character. He's an NPC. He is the guy in Grand Theft Auto that when you run up to the car, when you hit triangle and you pull the car door open and just casually pull the guy out, he's like the guy who gets pulled out of the car.
Yeah.
As far as he's concerned, that's all life is. You drive your car around the city, and then every now and again, someone just pulls you out and nicks it. Except he works in a bank, so in his case, he just gets robbed like 4 or 5 times a day. That's just life as far as Guy, played by Ryan Reynolds, is concerned. One day, however, he starts to sort of come to life. He starts to notice things. He starts to question his world. And what you effectively have is this Lego movie style narrative where he then meets his own personal wild style, played by, in this case, by Jodie Comer from Killing Eve, who is this sort of next level to him, like next level consciousness. In reality, she's a real world player that we're seeing in the game, but she's presented wild style, that's weird, as this sort of Trinity in the Matrix-like figure, and he becomes this aspiring do-gooder because he wants to basically gain her attention, and he has to earn XP, gameplay experience. And because he doesn't want to commit violence like all the characters in this video game do, he becomes like this sort of anti-hero, and he earns like minor points for like rescuing cats from trees and stopping muggings and things like that. And the perk of all this as well is that every time he's doing these things, as well as earning the XP, he also earns like coin. So he's stocking up on like without even realizing he has like the penthouse and all the toys and all these, even though he has no interest in any of it, and all he wants to do is win this girl. But on the outside as well are the people, the moderators running the game server, like Mythic Quest style, who kind of have a bit of an issue about this, what seems to be a player running around their game wearing the skin of a non-playable character, as far as they can see it.
Listen up, Neutrogena. You know you can't go around looking like that. The rules are clear. And another thing, you can't hack the NPC avatars.
No, sir.
It screws up the mission load, and it makes the game look bad.
Horrible!
Yeah. I got like 5% of that.
Lose the skin!
How am I supposed to get rid of my skin?
Take it off, man. Just take it off. What are you doing?
What? Seriously?
The whole thing. The face, the outfit, everything. Ditch it. If you don't, we're gonna kill you.
Why? And we're gonna keep killing you.
Still why? Until we do find out who you are, and then we're gonna ban you for life.
No. Okay, I want to comply. I just find the order of those threats very confusing.
Somebody's about to get shot.
Light him up!
Do you know what? When you said like he kind of breaks free from his everyday kind of occurrence, I was thinking, gosh, this sounds a bit Truman Show. In a way.
There's some of that. There is an element of the Truman Show in there. As he starts to become sort of notorious as a fixture of the game, there is a lot of that cutting to the outside world, looking in kind of thing.
Yeah.
A sort of a Truman Show-like element to it. His catchphrase as well, "Don't just have a good day, have a great day," is very similar to Truman's, in case I don't see you, have a... sorry. In case I don't see you, have a, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. It's very similarly pitched.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. There's been, like I said at the beginning, there's lots of hype around this, and I think everyone's looking at this as the big film of the summer. And actually, the reviews have been generally erring on the side of positive.
Good, they've been good.
Yeah, but some people have almost gone as far as to say this is like the groundbreaking video game movie that we needed. How far are you on that kind of spectrum?
I mean, I would go that far, to be honest. I would say this. Okay. There are times when this does feel like Ready Player One for a slightly different crop of millennials, maybe slightly younger. It does feel at times like maybe even Gen Z, I suppose, because its pop culture references are a lot more current, I would say, than for instance, Ready Player One. And obviously Ready Player One, kind of doubled down on that. This is as close as I think we'll ever get to seeing a Grand Theft Auto movie or a Fortnite movie. I'll give it that. Wow. So if you're into the whole Fortnite scene or anything like that, I mean, Fortnite gets a fair few look-ins in that. This is something that I would say probably plays like the Lego movie to the people that watch Silicon Valley. or Mythic Quest. In fact, there's a lot of Mythic Quest level humor in there. If you've seen that Apple TV Plus show recently, one of my favorites at the moment, Mythic Quest. This has a lot of that humor going for it, but a lot of the charm and a lot of the effect hangs on the well-worn, time-tested, charm that is Ryan Reynolds being the sort of dumbfounded everyman, the straight man. He's a reactionary character. As you could hear in that clip, it's like, we're going to kill you. Why? We're going to kill you. Still why? It is that shtick that Ryan Reynolds has sort of weaponized. This is just the latest iteration of, the Van Wilder performance, but that's all Ryan Reynolds' career is. It's just how many different, and that's all it was ever going to be. And that's fine because we like that performance. We like that Van Wilder performance.
That's what we know him for.
The breakout here, though, funnily enough, Jodie Comer. Did not see that coming. Jodie Comer in this, she's got the sort of every girl computer hacker thing going for her, but at the same time, she's got the computer programmer. She's kind of the Silicon Valley type. And then the other side is this badass Trinity type. And she pulls both off really well. She's got actual, big screen charm and appeal. I wouldn't have particularly expected it, but she does.
Would you not after Killing Eve? Because I think she plays so many different kind of iterations of her role and stuff in that you can see that she can do something like that.
Here's where I confess that I have not seen Killing Eve yet.
In which case, if you were impressed by what Jodie Comer did there, I would urge you to watch Killing Eve. Yeah, I think that's absolutely the thing. I don't think you'd be as surprised if you've seen Killing Eve.
She turns up in a lot of other, in minor roles and a lot of other things I watch. I remember her turning up as the sort of, the young girl, the husband got pregnant in Dr. Foster once upon a time. Yes, I have watched a British drama series. Please try not to faint. But, I do watch things other than American cable dramas occasionally. But and I was just shocked because she'd always played quite mousy characters in those things.
No, she's great as Villanelle in Killing Eve, and she's all bonkers all over the place. But listen, back to this. I think, I was like, I could probably take it or leave it. And actually, you've kind of won me over to think like you've pop culture references, Grand Theft Auto, Lego Movie, Truman Show, all that kind of stuff boiled together. And obviously with Ryan Reynolds doing what he does best, which is playing himself, sounds like a pretty solid movie.
It does. And I can tell you, if you like a bit of Ryan Reynolds, you're going to get a lot of Ryan Reynolds in this. You'll know when you've seen it. Anyway, but we'll move from the literal video game movie to the one that's sort of video game movie, I think.
Well, can we just talk about the very first... Okay, so we're talking about a movie called Boss Level, right? Which would say to you, this is definitely video movie stuff, right?
Sorry, we should just say, Free Guys in cinemas this weekend. Boss Level's on Amazon Prime. And this is kind of the same movie for very different ages.
Yeah, so the moment you get into this movie, like I'm talking about the first 2 minutes, it is literally an old school... this guy versus this guy and all the players grid that you could possibly play in the middle, and it's like a proper kind of like Street Fighter stroke Tekken sort of picking your character thing, and you're like,
they literally open this with like retro 16-bit Street Fighter.
And I was so excited. And the first kind of thing that you see of Frank Grillo, who plays the lead, is kind of a special ops officer or ex-special ops.
Well, they're always ex. They're always ex. They live in loft apartments. There's always loads of empty bottles around. And
exactly. He's got a drinking problem. He sleeps with too many women. Anyway, so he basically is in Groundhog Day. So he wakes up and he's basically going, this is going to happen to the extent. So they do this whole sequence where he's getting beaten up by someone and he's fighting someone and he knows the exact move. So he kind of effortlessly moves from side to side. There's a big helicopter outside that's like machine gunning him, and he knows exactly where the bullets are going to fly, so he just very casually walks past all of that. It's monotonous. And the whole thing is that it's the day of his death, so eventually we get to see where he dies, and it's about him kind of working through this sort of video game Groundhog Day that he kind of tends to live in.
I used to complain that every day felt the same, and now every day is the same. Seriously. Shoes, pants, rip them, flip them. Okay, coffee, anyone? I don't know how this is possible, but I keep repeating the same day. Sorry, pal! And as many times as I've seen this happen to my apartment, I still can't help but think I'm never, ever getting my security deposit back.
Now, you can hear the attitude from the clip, and that attitude is prevalent through the film. The problem with the film, for my money, is it just can't help itself but divert. It does a great setup. We've talked about the setup there when you're doing the video game graphics, when you've got that fantastic opening attack sequence in this apartment, and then we're going to lose the entire first act to a bloated flashback that's just going to kill the narrative dead. Like, no momentum. Kills it dead.
Yeah.
Give us this belter of an intro, and then it's just here's Frank Grillo just like hanging out for half an hour.
And also, it's like really dark as well. You know, I have this issue when movies are just too dark, but you've got a great kind of cast in this. You've got Naomi Watts is in this, which as your sexy scientist kind of girl.
Yeah, what have we come to? And Naomi Watts is just like the sexy throwaway scientist. This is like Tank Girl era Naomi Watts casting. What's going on?
Yeah, it's so bonkers. And Mel Gibson's in this as well, but it's like
he's the villain.
He's the villain of it. He's your M. Bison. He's, but it's bonkers, and it doesn't hold your attention. It's a shame, isn't it?
It doesn't. When it gets to the stuff that you're here for, which is, the stuff you're promised by the trailer, by the opening sequence, by that very clip, when it gets to that stuff, it's great. The problem is it diverts itself too often. There's that flashback. There's everything else. I mean, there's so much fun going for it otherwise, but the problem is it is 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, and it doesn't quite work. This is that point. You always get this in every time loop movie where you get that second act comedic aside when they realize they're in a time loop and they decide let's just go and have some fun. This is Bill Murray amusing himself, and this is Jack O'Neill shooting golf balls through the Stargate. This is that point in every time loop movie when they decide to have a laugh. Only this is the movie that expands that. This is taking the high school party and making Can't Hardly Wait. The problem is, this is not Can't Hardly Wait to that concept. And it's just not a patch as good. And the problem is that when it remembers what it's trying to do, it is that good. And that's really antagonizing, because I really had a lot riding on this. I really wanted to love this.
Yeah, I was really excited to watch this, and unfortunately I felt quite deflated by about halfway through the film. So what a shame. But you know what? Out of two video game movies, I think Free Guy is the big one for you to go and enjoy. And you can go and enjoy that on the big screen as well. So when we come back, we're going to bring you lots of things that you can enjoy on the small screen. And don't worry, there's no video game ones in there this week. We'll hold those back for another week. But stick with us. We'll have lots of great choices for you on your couch.
And now it's time for a segment we like to call Off-Screen Pays the Bills. Hey, Bex.
Hey, Van. What's going on?
Hey, nothing going on but the rent. You know how it is. And we need to, because we just had this out, we need to explain that saying. Okay, so Ain't Nothing Going On But the Rent is a Gwen Guthrie song, okay? It is an old-timey pop song from I think the mid-'80s. I mostly know of it because of Eddie Murphy. Okay, because of Eddie Murphy Raw. Did you ever watch Raw?
No, I didn't. But I every week or every couple of weeks that we have an advert that we are talking about that is helping us to pay our lovely rent, I always have to question what is the right way of saying this. And I often say, and we often have to stop and start again, what's going down? And you're like, no, you've got it wrong again. How do you not know this? And you've been saying to me, it's a Janet Jackson song, and it's not.
I thought it was Janet Jackson. I'm sorry, I thought it was. I thought it was Janet Jackson.
And the fact that you've just said it's a little pop song from the 70s and 80s, the word is there, little pop song. I
don't think little. I mean, Eddie Murphy jokes about it. I mean, and this was in Raw. This was like the biggest thing in the world in 1987 Raw. So I have to imagine. And in the sketch, he's talking about, I think he's talking about dating women in the 80s during sort of the female career woman, Melanie Griffith's power high of the late 1980s. And I think he talks about dating financially minded women in the late 80s. But speaking of financially minded women, you of course are a financially minded woman. You know a thing or two about budgeting.
I love your segue there. I do know. Well, do you know what? I'm actually not great at budgeting. I fly by the seat of my pants with it a little bit, and which you look surprised, and I often. I am quite organised, but I actually don't normally like to be kept accountable for
Bazing.
So, but actually, as I get older and wiser, I know that I need some help with this. So yeah, hopefully there is something out there that can help me be more accountable and to be better with my budgets.
This is one of those areas. I love it when we get a sponsor that I can actually enjoy the product. It's one of those, like, I live for that. And so this week, we got one that's right up my alley and will conveniently help you as well. Yeah. So I'm big into these budget apps. I love give me an app that I can like tie to my bank accounts that keeps track of all my bills and has a little calendar and tells you what's going out when, and give me if it can give me reports. Ooh, I love me a report, Becks. I do.
Oh, I'd rather not know. That's the thing.
Yes, but if you are correctly managed, then that goes away, and instead you get a FOMO of a glowing report. Trust me, it's a high that you can't replicate.
Fine.
And okay, so I've played with like a dozen of these over the years, and until recently I was using one called Emma. And now that's a pretty good one. And then I got to try this one. Okay, so this is called Wallet. And you can find this, you go to, because obviously there is the Apple Wallet in the App Store as well, so it's a little bit confusing to get to. So if you go to budgetbakers.com, you can find the link to the Android app, the iOS app. There's even, and I like this a great deal, a web app. How often do you see a web app available alongside the actual, the store apps? That never happens.
That never happens.
The whole thing is, exactly. You create an account, put in your details, sync it to your relevant bank accounts, and I think you can connect with, I think it's 58,000 banks in the world, or any currency. And they have this whole thing, they're really ethical, the whole we do not sell your data thing as well. And ethics with the whole financial management and budgeting app scene, ethics are a big thing because, one of the biggest names in budgeting, for instance, is like Mint, who are owned by Intuit, who, you've got companies like that who make taxes more complicated. And there's this whole unethical side of this that just makes life not worth living. And also, there's a bunch of these companies that are like, corrupt and lobbying people. And it's nice to have a, one with the angels. Best of all, if you go down to budgetbakers.com/offscreen, you can get a lifetime subscription to the Wallet, to the premium tier of the platform for the price of just 1 year. So, there's that.
Pretty good.
It's pretty good. I think this is a really good app. You can upload, your own spreadsheets, things like that, or you can use it on the fly, keep tabs from that. If you've got like records from previous, like I've got records from a dozen of these apps, I just imported them. Piece of cake, done, easy. It was great. I had a ball. I'm genuinely gonna keep using this app, which we don't get many sponsored products that I get to like. Oh, I'm gonna enjoy this for the rest of my life. But this one absolutely. So go to budgetbakers.com and you can find the relevant app for your platform. You can even use the web app just on budgetbakers.com if you want to, or go to budgetbakers.com/offscreen, get a lifetime subscription for the cost of a year. Thanks to us. I feel good about that.
Yeah, you should.
Welcome back to Offscreen. So, keeping it on the couch then, getting cinematic with the old CRT. Does anyone have a CRT television? I don't think anyone has. Do you have a CRT television?
No, massive, I don't know.
Ooh, God, they were huge.
Ah, okay.
I had this recently. I was watching Training Day, and I think in one scene in Training Day, you see like the massive like living room telly, one of those enormous like proper bling home cinemas and the lights. But they're about like 7 miles deep. One of those. But
yes, I remember those.
If you have a CRT, I'd imagine that was the CRT. But anyway, so movies on Freeview for the next 7 days. Let's start then. Tomorrow night, Saturday, 14th of August. This is a movie. I was thinking about this recently and it popped up. And I was like, I want to talk about this one because it never gets talked about. Remember in the 90s how in love with Sandra Bullock and Keanu we were as a pairing? Like we loved them as a pair. We wanted them back together. And we were all bummed out when Speed 2 Cruise Control robbed us of that. Thank you very, very much indeed. Script approval from Keanu Reeves. Anyway, that's literally what happened. Keanu Reeves was like, I'm not doing anything. That sounds terrible. That just sounds awful. Get
Cruise
someone
Control.
else. And their response. Yeah, their response was Jason Patrick, because that would have been my logical assumption as well. Anyway, Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves would then reteam in 2006 for The Lake House, a very, very different kind of movie to Speed. This is best described as a sort of a Nicholas Sparks adjacent romantic weepy that stars Sandra Bullock as, I think she's a doctor who moves into a lake house, this wonderfully designed, mostly glass and old style, like Chicago metal framed lake house that has a lovely mailbox outside. And she discovers that using this mailbox, she can basically send a message through time to the previous occupant of the house, Keanu Reeves. They become sort of pen pals, and wouldn't you know it, because they're Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves, they fall as in love with one another as we did with them in the mid-90s.
Okay, your turn. Favorite things?
Where to start? Okay. When I smell the flowers before I see them. When it starts to rain just as the picnic is ending. And I love the smell of Jack's paws.
You didn't forget to mention your husband, did you?
Oh, well, of course I love my husband, who is also a doctor, plastic surgeon, for small farm animals.
Good. I'm married too. I've got 8 children, and none of them look like me. I'm worried, Kate.
I would be too.
I'm single.
Me too.
Oh my God, I think I've just thrown up in my mouth. So this has exacerbated my love for both Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock because, I don't know if you know, but on a talk show here in the UK, I think it was Graham Norton, they had Sandra Bullock on in like 2019, and she confessed that she had a major crush on Keanu Reeves when they filmed Speed. He never knew, and that could have like led to them actually being together, and it's kind of like, oh my God. So this is like the halfway point for all of that. Yeah, I thought, you know what?
Go on, I was going to say they're not Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan or anything like that. It's not like Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas. Well, there is that. But but there is something of a charm in the pair of them, and they seem to have like that sort of that typical creakiness that Keanu Reeves has in his delivery. It kind of works here with the material. I don't want to talk about it too long because we've got like 6 of the movies to get through.
Yeah,
but. Like, this isn't going to reinvent the wheel, and it's not The Notebook or nothing, but it's quite a lovely little rom-dram. And, it's Keanu and Sandy B being lovely. And it's nicely shot. And the house is great. The house is great.
Well, all I'm going to say is when we did these listings and I did an initial sort of draft of it, and then you changed a couple because of the clips and things like that, and you put the lake house in, I didn't even know what this was. I rolled and went, oh, he's putting another horror movie.
Well, this is family friendly enough that it can be on at 7 p.m. on Saturday.
Well, there we go.
On 5-star 7 p.m. Saturday. ITV2 on Sunday then, 7:05 p.m. You're seeing out the weekend with Elle Woods, are you, Miss Perfect?
I am, and I love Elle Woods. Look, even though this is the sequel, this is Legally Blonde 2, which is on ITV2 at 7:05 p.m. on your Sunday. She is brilliant in this, and I'm excited for the new one that's going to come out, hopefully at some point soon.
I was going to say, is the sequel then, this is Elle Woods, is the bimbo who's become the lawyer who's now going to Washington for the sequel. Is that the...
Yes, to the Senate, I think it is, yeah. And I haven't seen this in years, but I do remember kind of initially going, oh God, the sequel's going to be terrible. And it wasn't. So I would definitely recommend giving this one a whirl.
Is it a better sequel than Miss Congeniality 2?
I think anything is better.
That is the right answer.
Yeah, okay. So we'll move swiftly on from that one because I think lots of people would have already seen Legally Blonde 2 and might just want to revisit that. It's a nice thing to do on a Sunday. Monday, Paramount Channel, 11:15 p.m. I had this as like my top pick on my VHS collection that I had back 2003. I think this came out, if my memory serves me correct, or maybe even earlier.
Earlier. This, I think this is actually, I think it might actually be 2000. Gone in 60 Seconds is 2000, and then the same guy, Dominic Sena, directs this a year later.
And this is Swordfish, because we haven't mentioned that yet, and it's on Paramount. Yeah, sort of quite vital there before we get carried away. Swordfish is on Paramount, 11:15 p.m. So I think John Travolta, Halle Berry's in this. Quite an all-star cast in this one.
This was Hugh Jackman's first big non-Wolverine role. So he'd broken out a year earlier with Wolverine in the first X-Men movie, and then a year later gets this chance because he's the computer hacker drafted in to basically aid John Travolta, the world's greatest terrorist or whatever he's meant to be. And Vinnie Jones, I think, is in there as well, in this great cyber heist. It's got a wonderfully shot CG opening in which they do a full, I think one of the earliest fully realized computer-generated three-dimensional sequences in which there's this huge explosion. Worth seeing just for that, I would say. There's also a sequence...
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
I was going to say, there is a sequence with Hugh Jackman doing his first hack, we shall say, that is just worth the movie on its own. Forget the intro. No. Stick around for Travolta with a gun to his head and something else going on, doing... not Travolta, Hugh Jackman with a gun to his head and something else going on, doing a hack. It's just incredible.
This was like that slick, sexy... It was actually out in 2001, not 2000, a movie. And I think I was just kind of... I was like, I was able to... I watched it once at Blockbuster and then it ended up in like a bargain bin and I was like, I'll have that. Thanks very much.
Totally. Because everyone owns this, because everyone got it free with their first DVD player, because it was one of those films. Anyway, Swordfish is worth a watch. It's a giggle. Let's talk then Tuesday, film for 11:20. This is a taut thriller to see you through to your slumber. It's Searching with John Cho. We talked about this very briefly last week when we were talking about Profile, and I was, I tend to hold Searching up as the pinnacle of the screen life format. Just the best anyone has ever done with the format, I think. Profile comes very close, though. This is John Cho searching for his daughter using only her social media platforms and her laptop screen. Good, solid supporting role in there for Deborah Messing as well, of all people, which I never thought I would say out loud. But there we go. And let's talk then on Wednesday. Let's talk about a family classic. Let's talk about a movie that I think should just be issued to all families in like delivery rooms when they have a newborn child. It's like, your child has been born, here is your copy of Kindergarten Cop, please show this child. But if you can't get up to get to the DVD player, you only have access to the remote control, you can turn over to Film 4 on Wednesday at 6:45. You can watch Kindergarten Cop there. Kindergarten Cop, Bex. How much do we love Kindergarten Cop?
I mean, anyone's kid that doesn't watch this probably won't really fit in with society, but I love this film. And it's kind of up there, like, the Arnie, the comedic Arnie of Kindergarten Cop, like Twins, those kind of movies. This is kind of when this sort of fits that kind of time frame. And it's just, someone that can take the mick out of themselves in this way, I think is brilliant. And I think it worked. He does. What was the terrible one? Was it with Hugh Grant? Was it who was when he was pregnant? Is that Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Oh, Junior with Danny DeVito.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You're thinking Hugh Grant because Emma Thompson was in that.
Oh, okay.
That's why you're thinking Hugh Grant.
Do you know what I mean? He did this like plethora of films, which is just like, is Arnie taking the mick out of himself? What's going on here?
I mean, we don't have the time for me to get properly too into it, but me and my scholarly ways on the Austrian oak, I will tell you. So this movie comes along at a really interesting point because you had the 80s slew of actioners, and you had Arnie being quite a non-kid friendly entity, and then of course 1991 rolls around, Terminator 2, the whole gimmick of Terminator 2, and we forget this now, is there is that sequence in the movie in which the kid sees Schwarzenegger for the first time and he turns around, the cop's on the other side, and it was meant, it's meant to play like the cop is meant to appear as the good guy. Arnie is the villain, and it is a twist that he's the good guy. We forget, because that twist doesn't play the same way now, because we historically know Arnie is the good Terminator. It was a shock at the time. At the same time, you have Arnie becoming more institutionalized and kid-friendly because he starts becoming a big part of the presidential fitness plan and things like that. He starts appealing to kids, and to capitalize on the image, they sort of effectively Space Jam him about half a decade before Space Jam by saying, you know what, let's just take Arnie, give him some kids to play with in a family-friendly sort of action-ish comedy and see what happens. And the answer was this.
You tell me, who is your daddy and what does he do? Get it? Okay, we start right here. You.
My dad repairs red cars driven by women who are pinheads. My dad doesn't do anything since the crash. My dad doesn't live with us anymore. He lives in New York and drives a taxi. My mom hopes he's gonna die real soon. My dad's divorced. My mom's divorced. Our mom says that our dad is a real sex machine.
Good.
Oh my goodness! Right, I'm gonna. I think that's it. That's it. Hit its pinnacle. So you guys just watch the movie. It's brilliant. Let's move on very swiftly. Like to Thursday. This is on Great Movies at 6:40 p.m. It's one of my favorite movies that doesn't do a lot. It's What's Eating Gilbert Grape. It stars Johnny Depp and the Oscar-nominated Leonardo DiCaprio for his role in this, where he's like, Gilbert, I'm gonna drown.
Arnie. He's Arnie Grape, isn't he?
Yeah, he's Arnie Grape. And basically, this is the story of Gilbert, who has to look after his disabled brother and his obese mother in a small town. And it's kind of he's trying to navigate what the hell to do with his life. And I think is it Juliette Lewis or is it Mary?
No, it is. In fact, it's both. It's Mary Steenburgen. Mary Steenburgen, I think, is in this, and Juliette Lewis.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the quintessential why we love Johnny Depp movie, isn't it?
Yes. It is very much so. And I cried in this and I've laughed in it and I thought it was brilliant. And if you haven't seen it, please do give it a watch. We haven't got a clip for it, but we very much would recommend it.
I'm going to find which American Dad episode it is that's got the best parody you've ever seen of Gilbert Grape. I'm going to send you the link.
Oh.
You've got to watch it. And it's John Krasinski as Johnny Depp.
Really?
As an animated squirrel, as Gilbert Grape. It's phenomenal. Anyway, what we got to round out the week then. So Friday night, BBC One, 10:35 p.m. I wish we had more time to talk about this. We're going to have to skip the clip for time reasons. Destroyer is on. Nicole Kidman. I loved this movie. And she's the cop haunted by an undercover assignment that went wrong, who goes rogue effectively and just starts killing her way through the organization, basically for revenge. It's incredible. It's Nicole Kidman in full monster mode. Like, she's got the heavy prosthetics to make her look like ragged and haggard and and she's pounding a scotch and wearing a skinny fit leather jacket. And she really goes for it in this. I didn't even know she had this in her. Hats off. She's phenomenal in it. She really sells this. And I'm shocked that this didn't get serious awards, because it did come out around that time, but it got weirdly overlooked. Then again, you and I know that this happens a lot. There's always one or two every award season that just don't get a look in. And it was Nicole Kidman's turn in 2018 with Destroyer, which is on 10:35 Friday night, BBC One. Bex, did you see this?
I haven't seen this, but I'm really interested in watching it. So, look, I think that's a good Friday night movie. I think Nicole Kidman in transformative form is going to be the thing to watch. So that's BBC One, 10:35 p.m. We're going to rapidly tell you to don't forget to listen back to all of those recommendations again, because there's loads of great ones in there. And when we come back, we're going to be bringing you what's on streaming and for you to listen and watch on digital. Welcome back to Off Screen. Now, on our final block of the week, we are taking you through a rapid ride of streaming offerings. And I know Van is chomping at the bit to talk about this first one because it's a little doll with a lot of horror. His name is Chucky, and he's got a bride this time, and he's coming to Netflix on Monday. I know you aren't like in love with Chucky. This is your thing, isn't it? Your jam.
My favorite horror franchise of all the sort of schlock 80s slasher franchises, the 70s, 80s ones, and I'm a big horror guy. But my favorite franchise is the Child's Play series. I'm such a fiend for it, and I'm following like all the cast of the upcoming Chucky series on Instagram, like Jennifer Tilly and Devon Sawa, and the stuff they're posting is incredible. My mind is blown, and I'm so excited. But this is the 1998 reboot of the series. So you had the original trilogy, and the trilogy had ended on kind of a down note because of the Jamie Bulger case.
Yeah.
Because the third movie had been kind of unfairly caught up in that. I think the story had been that I think the dad of one of the killers had rented the movie recently, and someone in the press had gotten a hold of this and circulated. And there was a couple of movies around that time that were unfairly tarnished with that brush because of it. They were seen as promoting, psychopathic tendencies in children or something, which was insane. And then 5 years later, the series got rebooted by Ronnie Yu. Ronnie Yu was he was the Dwayne Johnson of reviving horror franchise at this point. He went on to be the one guy who could finally revive Freddy versus Jason and make that project happen. But here, he decides to take Chucky in a very different direction, which is what happens if we actually let creator Don Mancini inject as much comedy as he wants into this. And the result is Chucky stops being an outright threat and becomes this very meta character. You suddenly realize that it had been 10 years since Charles Lee Ray had been murdered. History's moved on. So you have Chucky, this psychopathic murdering killer who just does not get on with the world around him, who just can't make heads or tails of the music scene, who thinks teenagers are worse now than they somehow were in the 80s. And he misses how stupid they used to be versus kind of how wise-ass they are now. It's a great time, and all of this gets this added element courtesy of Jennifer Tilly, who comes to the franchise as the new character Tiffany, who was Chucky's real-life partner, who then gets put into a doll herself, and it then leads to just a scene between the two that when I was 15, you just could in no way have prepared me for, that I just did not expect to see in a Charlton movie. And I say that from a movie that couldn't really get more shocking than, featuring the only Katherine Heigl performance I've ever enjoyed. But there you go. Anyway, Bride of Chucky, I can't recommend it high enough. It's a phenomenal reboot. There is another great reboot, I think 2 or 3 movies later, called Curse of Chucky. Either one of those are great. That one's more horror, this is more comedy, but this is just a good time. You don't need to have seen Child's Play especially to have enjoyed this. It's just a good time. Just enjoy it. Okay. Same day, though, Netflix is getting a movie that's already on Disney Plus. That's a favorite of mine. I showed it to my nephew recently, and I still think it's just a great underrated animated romp. Have you seen Mr. Peabody and Sherman, Dex?
I haven't, but do you know what I've heard? I've heard loads, right? And I've heard really good things from adults who say that this is great. But I've never. It's passed me by, I have to say.
This is coming to Netflix Monday. I think it's a Fox movie that means it's now owned by Disney, so it's on Disney Plus as well. And it is the old cartoons from I think the 50s. They were like PSAs in for like American school children. Mr. Peabody and Sherman. They kind of taught history using a time machine. It's like a dog and his human son, and they travel through time and they learn things about history. And this is a full-blown feature-length, spin-off of that, starring Phil Dunphy from Modern Family, Ty Burrell, I think, as Mr. Peabody, and it is about the adventures they get into. Here's a clip of them with some Spartans.
But he's only a child. Your dad may not think you're ready to become a man, Shermanus, but we do.
Yeah, Mr. Peabody. Now I'll show you what I can handle.
FYI, a lot of heroes have father issues. My old man is a minotaur, half man, half bull, all judgment. Ajax here, strongest guy in the world, but his father never accepted that his real dream was to sing.
I wanted to be in the Greek chorus.
Yeah, and don't even get me started about Oedipus. Let's just say that you do not want to be at his house over the holidays. It's awkward.
Yeah, that's Patrick Warburton. Yeah.
Can you hear the
level of you can hear the level of punnery in there, the humor that it goes for. It's really knowing dad humor. And there's no one, the cast they've got, there's no one more perfect for it than who they've got. Ty Burrell, I learned how to pronounce his name at some point, as Peabody is great. Ariel Winter, funnily enough, who plays his on-screen daughter in Modern Family, who plays Alex in Modern Family, is in the movie as well as one of the central characters. She's the little girl who joins them for the adventure. And of course, Patrick Warburton from Family Guy and Ted, you can hear as well. And just a good time. I would describe it as like an animated movie Doctor Who for kids. It even gets resolved kind of the same way. It's really fun. I saw this with I don't think you've ever met my friend Chris Wilson. He came with me to a screening of this. It was just like a public screening. It was a preview screening, something like a Sunday morning. And he stayed at mine. We went along to this screening, and he didn't know what he was seeing. He just came along and saw all this stuff with me. And sometimes we saw great stuff, sometimes we saw rubbish. He loved this. He thought this was hilarious. And to be fair, that guy knows his meta humor. And he just thought this was great. I can't fault it. If you've got kids, absolutely check this out. I put it on for Henry. He's 2.5, and he had a blast with it. He was giggling away. He thought this was great.
Brilliant.
But,
Well,
and-
that's some strong Netflix offerings this week coming out on streaming. What we also have are two very strong retro offerings on Disney Plus. Starting with a double bill of one of my favourite Danny Boyle films and a not so favourite sequel, but still okay.
Really? You don't like the sequel?
No, I don't. I really, really love the original. So we're talking about, this is coming out on the Friday week, which is 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. 28 Days Later stars Cillian Murphy as kind of like the breakthrough role for Cillian Murphy in this.
It was the first biggie, wasn't it? Like, he'd been in things, but this is the first, right, you remembered who he was.
Exactly. And then he sort of started a collaboration with Danny Boyle. He was in things like Sunshine and stuff like that. So anyway, but this is one of the best kind of gritty zombie movies I think I've ever seen. It's incredible, this movie.
Well, this is arguably, I think, the forerunner to our current era of the zombie fad. Because obviously we're in the zombie fad that hasn't really ended now since Dawn of the Dead and Shaun of the Dead with the double bill. But they were both preempted by this, I think, about 3 years earlier. I think 28 Days Later was like 2001, 2002, I want to say.
Yeah, I think it's along those lines. Yeah, but the everything, like even the branding and how this was portrayed on the poster.
Revolutionary now. It was revolutionary at the time, sorry. When you look back on it now, we forget, but it was revolutionary.
Yeah, it really was. And this, again, is another sort of pioneering move from Danny Boyle. But basically, for anyone that hasn't seen it, it's about a guy who wakes up the morning essentially after the apocalypse of zombies.
Well, I think you'll find it's 28 mornings.
28 mornings after, sorry. Oh, yeah, 28 mornings after. That would make more sense with the title of the movie. Well, why did I think it was the morning after? Oh, it must be another movie that they do that. Anyway, and he's kind of, again, navigating his way through. And Naomi Harris is in this as well, which I believe she's one of the characters.
Brendan Gleeson as well, I think, never gets the kudos. I think Brendan Gleeson's phenomenal in this movie. I did Secret Cinema for 28 Days Later, and it was a blast.
Yeah, I can imagine, actually. There's a scene in the movie where there's just a drop of blood. So obviously, if you get bitten or if there's any blood that enters your system, you get turned into a zombie. And I think it is with Brendan Gleeson where it is the moment where a bit of blood just drops from the ceiling and you follow that drop as it just goes into his eye. And you're like, oh my God. So the tension that is built in this is brilliant. I think, 28 Weeks Later is okay. It just isn't as iconic as the first film, which...
It's not. It's a lot more throwaway because it has the feel of a studio sequel whereas the first movie feels like a grunge indie film. First movie, I believe, is one of the first British films to employ digital for filming.
Oh, yeah. The rain sequences in that is that. Oh, I remember that.
I remember it being a big deal. It was a huge deal at the time that they were shooting it on digital. And there are certain films that have these weird distinctions. I remember Napoleon Dynamite being banded around the press like, it's so revolutionary. They edited this entirely on a Mac. And you're like, okay. And it turned out to be this program no one had heard of called Final Cut Pro. And you're like, oh, wow, this is going to change the industry. And like, yeah, it kind of did, and we all just didn't notice. It just overtook the industry. Let's talk then really quickly. Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion coming out same day, also on Disney Plus, Friday 20th. Are you a fan? You must be a fan of Romeo and Michelle. This is right up your alley, surely.
All right, yeah, fine, it is. Mira Sorvino and Lisa Kudrow, two high school kind of like dim-witted, inseparable friends is how you'd kind of describe them. And they basically go on their road for their 10-year high school reunion, and they have this like elaborate lie about their lives and how great they are in order to impress their old school friends. It's really funny.
Didn't one of them invent Post-its?
Yeah, something like that.
One of them invented Post-its.
It's kind of like, like Legally Blonde, but in a different way. There's that kind of feel to it. And if you haven't seen it before...
You'd put this on like a playlist on Netflix alongside something like, Clueless, Legally Blonde, things like that. You absolutely would, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And it's well worth the watch. Yeah, it's super funny. And, Lisa Kudrow stepping away from Phoebe Buffay and doing something different. It works really well. So definitely catch that. It's a nice way to kind of like round up next week as well for you. But great selections there on the old streaming front. I think kind of nostalgic sort of throwback bringbacks to that we can now watch on our platforms. And also Freeview, we've got a lot of things that we can watch on the telly box as well. But the big thing that both you and I love this week has to be WeWork. I think that's got to be the big film from us, which you wouldn't expect to watch, but I think you'll get completely hooked the moment you sit down to realise this bonkers story.
I just can't get over that whole thing's like, dude, you're renting desks.
But how amazing is that? You know,
that moment in there, that's like the moment in the Firefest documentary where the guy says, so I went over there totally prepared to, you're like, that's this moment. That's this movie's version of that moment.
Yeah. I'm with you. But listen, next week we've got what have we got next week? Do we know?
Snake Eyes, isn't it?
Snake Eyes, Henry Golding. Yeah,
Henry Golding's finally like getting a lead role in a franchise movie. It's just a shame it had to be a Paramount one and G.I. Joe. I mean, like that's not gonna work out. Like surely. Like, God, no. I mean, I feel bad for him, and I also feel bad for Regé-Jean Page, who's got The Saint. It's like, guys, you're in Paramount franchises. None of these are going to work out, like we all know.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to wait and see. It might be proved wrong. It might be absolutely mind-blowing, but it might just not make any money. Yeah, exactly. So stay tuned for that with us each and every Friday. As you know, we've always got your 7-day guide. But for now, I've been Becks Perfect.
I've been Van Connor, and we shall return.